Welcome to Through a Glass Darkly Radio. You're listening to us on United Public Radio, and the intro song is Mark of the Doomslayer by Karl Casey. All right. As always, the first thing to ask is, can you all hear me? I feel like you might not. So I'll start reading comments as soon as somebody confirms they can hear me. 5 by 5. Okay, loud and clear. Got it. All right, let's go through comments really quickly, and then I'll get started for the usual scheduled program. Okay. Hey, Apex UFO Hunters, good to see you again. Oracle of Relfi, nice to see you. Poilu Paradise says, love you all. Good to see you. Jalay Jalal, good to see you. Hey, Scott, good to see you again, my friend. Philip Blair, good to see you. I'm just going through. All right, good. I am loud and clear. All right, I just got it. I haven't even opened it up yet. So Jalay Jalal's asking, how is my Duncan? It just arrived right before I started, and I'm desperately trying to upload. Actually, the uploading is happening right now. I just finished editing 6 more episodes, so you have no idea how long it takes to like generate thumbnails, descriptions, and stuff like that. It literally takes all day to do that many. It is absolutely painful. So, and I've only generated 4 thumbnails. I have 2 more to do, and then as we speak, I was editing Jason Giorgiani's stuff. So what the heck is going on with Twitter? Oh, I uploaded the wrong Twitter account. That's awesome. I will change that. All right. I should be showing up on Twitter now. Oh boy, just lots of stuff going on. Let's see. Paradise sounds good. All right. Let's get started. Just take one little sip. Before it starts getting cold. And we will get started now. All right. Where am I? Let's see. All right. The Book of Thoth and the Origins of Writing as Magic. From the temples of ancient Egypt to the secret... two quick things before I get started. I use AI to generate the scripts. If I don't like the scripts, I have it regenerate, and then that's how it goes. And this is the only thing I use. Only scripts I use AI for. Everything else, all my short stories and all that good stuff, are just me. But anyway, I work 100 hours a week, so in order for me to do this radio show, I need help. So yeah, Jason is a fascinating character. I could have interviewed him for hours, but I'm definitely going to invite him back. So anyway, sorry. Philip Blair says Jason Giorgiani is a fascinating character. I love his interview with Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove. Yeah, it's like the first one, and then he got canceled when the intelligence agencies ran an op on him. But anyway, all right. And the other thing too is, please check to make sure you're subscribed. If you're a new subscriber, welcome. Thank you very much. I've had a lot in the last few days, although it's now starting to, the big burst that I had from one of my videos is now starting to return to normal levels, sadly. So I want to try to get to 20,000. It's a modest goal by the end of the year. it was looking like it was within spitting distance. Now it doesn't. So, if you're listening and you like the show, please subscribe. If you have subscribed and think you are subscribed, please double check and make sure that YouTube did not unsubscribe you, because it does that sometimes. All right. So I'm going to restart the regularly scheduled program. All right. So the Book of Thoth and the Origins of Writing as Magic. From the temples of ancient Egypt to the secret libraries of Renaissance magi, writing has often been regarded not merely as a mundane tool of record keeping, but as a magical act imbued with sacred power. Nowhere is this notion more evident than in the legend of the Book of Thoth, a mystical volume said to contain the divine secrets of the gods. Here, let me just change something real quick. Okay. Okay. A book so powerful that its theft could unleash curses and misfortune. The very idea of a book penned by a god highlights how closely writing and magic were intertwined in the human imagination in ancient civilizations. To inscribe words was to invoke unseen forces. Egyptian hieroglyphs were called Medu Neter, words of the gods, and considered inherently magical, while in Mesopotamia, the written tablet of destinies conferred cosmic authority upon its possessor. This report explores the Book of Thoth through historical, mythological, and esoteric lenses, and examines how early cultures perceived writing itself as a form of magic. We will survey Egyptian traditions of Thoth, sacred texts, Hermetic, and occult reinterpretations of the Book of Thoth, and compare these with other early magical writing systems such as Sumerian cuneiform and the angelic Enochian alphabet of the Renaissance. In doing so, we trace the evolution of the concept of sacred or magical writing from antiquity through the Renaissance occult revival, demonstrating with scholarly evidence how the written word became a conduit of mystical power across different eras. So we'll start with Thoth, scribes, and the sacred book in ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, writing was a divine gift personified by the god Thoth, who was venerated as the patron of scribes, the measurer of time, and the master of knowledge and magic. Egyptian lore held that Thoth invented writing and language, either on his own or in concert with his consort Seshat, and bestowed it upon humanity. Every act of writing was thus under Thoth's patronage. Scribes would pour out a drop of ink in his honor before beginning their work. Significantly, the Egyptians did not have a separate term for religion as we understand it. The closest concept was Heka, the divine magic or authoritative utterance that underlies creation. Thoth, as excellent of understanding, embodied this power of the word. He observed and recorded all things, reporting them to the sun god Ra. In myth, Thoth's words could even bring things into existence, aligning with the Egyptian belief that speech and writing had creative magical efficacy. Indeed, in one cosmogony, it is Ta, or Thoth, who speaks the world into being. Illustrates that to write or speak a name was to manifest the reality. Because Thoth was the source of all knowledge and the inventor of writing, the Egyptians practiced pseudepigraphy, attributing nearly every sacred or learned text to Thoth as a mark of esteem. Iamblichus, a Neoplatonic philosopher, explained that it was natural for Egyptian priests to credit all their writings to Thoth as homage for his being the source of all knowledge. Thus, Thoth was believed to be the author not only of specific magic books, but of foundational works like the Body of Coming Forth by Day, or the Book of the Dead itself. This reverence is reflected in late antique accounts. The church father Clement of Alexandria wrote that the Egyptian priests had 42 sacred books containing the whole philosophy of the Egyptians, all of which were said to be written by Hermes, i.e., Thoth, whom Greeks identified with Hermes. These 42 books, a number that perhaps symbolized completeness, were encyclopedic in scope, covering hymns, rituals, astrology, geography, medicine, and more. Clement's testimony underscores that to the Egyptians and those they influenced, writing was a repository of sacred wisdom, with Thoth, Hermes, as the ultimate divine author. Among the many texts attributed to Thoth, the most fabled is the Book of Thoth itself, a mythical book of magic that appears in Egyptian legend. In a famous story from the Ptolemaic period, Prince Neferkaptah finds the Book of Thoth after overcoming a series of supernatural guardians, only to suffer a dreadful curse for stealing it. The tale, recorded in a Demotic papyrus featuring Prince Setne Kamwaset as protagonist, describes the Book of Thoth as containing all knowledge of laws, magic, nature, and the afterlife, including two powerful spells, one that allows the reader to understand the speech of animals, and one to behold the gods themselves. The book had been hidden at the bottom of the Nile, locked in nested boxes and guarded by serpents to prevent its misuse. Neferkaptah's triumph in obtaining it is short-lived, for his impiety in taking the god's own spellbook, the god's exact vengeance by killing his wife and child, and Neferkaptah ultimately drowns himself in grief. Generations later, Setne Kamwaset also attempts to steal this book from Neferkaptah's tomb and is chastened by a horrific illusion and the angry ghost of Neferkaptah, forcing him to return it and bury the dead properly. The moral of the story is explicit. Certain divine knowledge is not meant for humanity. The legend of the Book of Thoth thus encapsulates key Egyptian attitudes, that written spells could yield godlike power, but also that such knowledge was sacred and dangerous, guarded by the gods. Notably, the Book of Thoth's described powers reinforced the idea that writing itself was magical. When Neferkaptah first opened the golden box and read a page, at once he had enchanted the sky, the earth, the abyss, the mountains, and the sea, and he understood the language of birds, fish, and beasts. Reading the second page, he beheld the gods in their true forms and even drew fish up from the depths by the strength of the spell. In other words, the mere act of reciting the written words produced cosmic effects. Furthermore, Neferkaptah uses a magical technique to transfer the book's spells into his own body, writing the spells on new papyrus, washing the ink off into a cup of beer and drinking it. And at once he knew all the spells contained in the book. This vivid detail from the tale has parallels in later magical practice. For instance, recipes in the Greek magical papyri call for writing incantations in ink, then washing and ingesting them. It underscores that the written spells were thought to physically embody power that could be internalized by consuming the written words. While the legendary Book of Thoth remained elusive, Egyptian literature does contain texts that invoke Thoth's authority. In fact, Egyptologists Richard Jasnow and Karl Zausisch have identified an actual Demotic text from the Ptolemaic period, which they call the Ancient Egyptian Book of Thoth. Surviving in over 40 fragmentary manuscripts, it consists of a dialogue between a figure named the One Who Loves Knowledge, perhaps a young scribe or initiate, and a divine respondent who the editors interpret as Thoth himself. That the topics range from the work of scribes to discussions of the gods, sacred animals, and the Duat, or netherworld. This suggests the text was a kind of initiatory manual or wisdom book for scribes, casting Thoth as the teacher. In a similar vein, many funerary spells and temple rituals were attributed to Thoth. As one modern scholar notes, all funerary spells could be regarded as works of Thoth. A tradition grew up that Thoth had written 42 books containing all the knowledge needed by humanity. Some of this was occult knowledge to be revealed only to initiates who would not misuse the power it gave them. In effect, the Egyptians imagined a corpus of sacred books by Thoth, a complete library of magical and scientific knowledge of which only portions were accessible to the righteous. The rest might be hidden away to be discovered by worthy initiates in some future time. This concept greatly influenced later esoteric thought, as we shall see with the Hermetica and occult traditions claiming ancient wisdom texts. Crucially, the Egyptian view of writing per se was steeped in sanctity and magic. Their hieroglyphic script was called Mudomonater, usually translated as words of the gods. By the way, I couldn't pronounce that as there are no vowels in the word that they just showed me. Just so you know. As the Tree of Vision study of Egyptian magic explains, hieroglyphs were believed to possess an inherent power. They were regarded as living things imbued with the life of that which they signified. Each sign often depicted a natural or mythic element, carried the indwelling presence of the divine principle it represented. Writing a hieroglyph was not a neutral act. It was a controlled evocation of the concept of deity depicted. This is why Egyptian decorum sometimes avoided writing out the name of dangerous entities. For instance, drawing a snake sign in segments so as not to create a live snake. In the Egyptian magical worldview, images and words could affect reality. Words gave life to the things they represented, and speaking or inscribing a name or formula could cause the corresponding effect in the world. Thoth, being lord of writing, was naturally also a master magician. One epithet calls him the one who made calculations concerning the stars and drew the plans of the heavens, linking the writing of signs to the very design of creation. The magical use of writing permeated Egyptian practice. The earliest religious texts, the pyramid texts inscribed in the pyramids of the Old Kingdom, circa 2400 to 2300 BC, are essentially spells written to secure the pharaoh's resurrection. By committing these incantations to writing on the tomb walls, the Egyptians believed they were permanently making them happen. A concept that one historian summarizes as writing allows events to be repeatedly made to happen by means of magic. Countless magical papyri, amulets, and inscriptions attest to the power of the written word. For example, names of enemies could be written on clay figurines or pots and then ritually smashed. A hostile spell known as the execration texts. Conversely, protective amulets often bore written spells or divine names. A piece of papyrus bearing a spell might be hung around a patient's neck to heal them. The Book of the Dead, copies of which were buried with mummies, consisted of written spells that literally ensured the deceased's safe passage through the underworld by virtue of being recited or read in the afterlife. In later Greco-Roman Egypt, the tradition continued. The Greek magical papyri include rites where magical words are written in special ink, for e.g. with myrrh, and then washed off and ingested so that the practitioner internalizes the spell's power. All these practices illustrate the core Egyptian belief that writing is itself a magical technology, a way to bring metaphysical effects into being. As one summary puts it, hieroglyphs were also used for practical magic, sometimes drawn in ink on the skin of a person for healing or protection. Writing was considered a magical act. In short, to the Egyptians, the gods had spoken the world into existence, and by writing in the divine language, priests and magicians could tap into that creative power. The mythic Book of Thoth was the supreme symbol of this worldview, a text so potent that it conferred mastery over nature and even glimpses of the divine, essentially writing as magic in its purest form. Hermes Trismegistus and Hermetic interpretations. Thoth and Hermes conjoined. When Egyptian civilization came under Hellenistic influence, the figure of Thoth found a new avatar in Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great Hermes, basically what it means. Greek and Egyptian religious thinkers identified Hermes and Thoth as the same deity, reasoning that both presided over writing, knowledge, and the occult arts. In Ptolemaic and Roman times, this syncretic Hermes Thoth was imagined as an ancient sage or even a demigod who had revealed profound wisdom in written form. The Greeks had long associated Hermes with secret knowledge as a patron of astrology, for example, but in this fusion, Hermes Trismegistus took on the full intellectual might of Thoth. He became revealed as a primordial teacher of magic, science, and philosophy. A Greek philosophical text from the 3rd century BCE praises Hermes as Thoth for civilizing humanity. It was Hermes that the alphabet was invented and that he taught language, astronomy, and music to humanity. In effect, Hermes Trismegistus was seen as the author of all knowledge, said to have written thousands of books, as one account describes, uniting Egypt and Greece, magic and philosophy, astrology and alchemy. Then we move on to the Corpus Hermeticum and ancient wisdom texts. Many writings were attributed to Hermes Trismegistus in antiquity. Collectively, these Hermetica range from astrological and alchemical treatises to theological philosophical dialogues. Scholars divide them into technical Hermetica on magic, astrology, medicine, etc., often in an esoteric or coded style, and philosophical Hermetica, cosmic and spiritual discourses. The latter category includes the famous Corpus Hermeticum, a set of Greek texts likely composed in the 1st through 3rd centuries AD, which present revelations of Hermes and to his disciples on the nature of the cosmos and the mind of God. In these dialogues, for instance, Poimedres and Asclepius, Hermes Trismegistus imparts transcendent knowledge about the divine spirit, the creation of the universe, the heavenly bodies, and the path of spiritual rebirth. While composed relatively late, the Hermetic writings were cast in the guise of extremely ancient Egyptian wisdom. The Asclepius, which survives in Latin, even contains distinctly Egyptian elements, including a famous passage on how Egyptian priests could make gods by ritually animating statues through sacred words and symbols. It describes priests drawing divine powers or souls into material images through hymns and incantations, a practice presented as part of Egypt's secret knowledge. Such passages reinforce the notion that the Egyptians, Thoth, Hermes, possessed arcane magical wisdom about ensouling images and wielding hidden forces. Early Christian writers like Augustine and later Thomas Aquinas quoted these sections with a mix of horror and awe, condemning the idolatry, yet acknowledging the technical detail with which Hermes described God-making via mystical inscriptions and invocations. For our purposes, the key point is that the Hermetica perpetuated Thoth's legacy as a writer of magical books. In one Hermetic fragment, Hermes says, "I will make thine soul immortal and thy body become celestial. Write my words into hieroglyphic characters," linking the act of writing in sacred characters to the attainment of divine knowledge. The Hellenistic and Roman era imagination systematized Hermes Thoth's output into a body of canonical works. We've already noted Clement of Alexandria's report of the Egyptian priestly library, 42 books of Hermes covering all fields of knowledge. Later, Alexandrian traditions elaborated this list. A text known as the Hermetic Definitions claims Hermes Trismegistus inscribed his wisdom on stelae and in books which were stored in Egyptian temples. The number 42 possibly corresponded to the number of nomes, or provinces of Egypt, each under the patronage of a chapter of sacred lore. While many of these books are lost or mythical, some have plausible counterparts. For example, hymns and rituals would correspond to parts of the Book of the Dead, astronomical books, real Egyptian texts on the heavens, etc. The important fact is that Greco-Roman intellectuals accepted the existence of a primordial archive of Hermetic writings. These were viewed as essentially magical or divinely inspired texts, and later Hermeticists tried to identify or reconstruct them. An echo of this can be seen in a statement preserved by an Arab historian. The ancient Egyptians had 42 volumes from Hermes, containing their entire knowledge. In summary, Hermes Trismegistus became the Greco-Roman personification of Thoth as author of magical books, and the legitimacy of many later occult or Gnostic works was bolstered by claiming Hermes or Thoth was the author. The Hermetic corpus survived through late antiquity and into the Byzantine era, albeit in limited circulation. Come the Renaissance, these texts would explode onto the scene of European thought, a development we will explore a little bit later in this podcast. For now, it is crucial to note that the Hermetica were revered by Renaissance scholars as the lost wisdom of Thoth. Renaissance thinkers like Marsilio Ficino and Giovanni Pico della Mirandola saw Hermes Trismegistus as a Prisa Theologia figure, a sage of hoary antiquity, believed contemporary with Moses or earlier, who had recorded pure divine wisdom before it was fragmented by later religions. In 1463, when a Greek manuscript of the Corpus Hermeticum reached Florence, Cosimo de' Medici urged Ficino to stop translating Plato and render Hermes into Latin immediately. So eager was he to unlock the ancient Egyptian wisdom. Ficino's Latin translation, published as Poemander in 1471, indeed portrayed the Hermetic dialogues as profound revelations of theological truth. Although we now know these texts were not literally pharaonic in age, Ficino and his contemporaries were convinced of their antiquity and authority. The impact was enormous. Ficino's translation became one of the most influential books of the Renaissance, igniting a revival of Platonic and mystical philosophy and seeding ideas that would grow into alchemy, Kabbalah, Rosicrucianism, and Freemasonry. In Ficino's view, Hermes' emphasis on the power of the stars, of words, and of images to draw divine influence dovetailed with his own practice of natural magic and astrology. This Renaissance Hermeticism essentially re-imported Thoth's legacy via the Hermetic texts into Western esotericism, where writings and symbols were again accorded magical potency. Even as the Church scrutinized such ideas, with Aquinas' arguments about characters on talismans being appeals to demons, remained a caution. A learned milieu had emerged in which to study ancient languages and symbols was to recover the magic of the ancients. This attitude paved the way for new books of Thoth, conceived in early modern occultism, notably in the realms of tarot and angelic magic, as we shall see. Occult reinterpretations, the Book of Thoth in tarot and modern esoterica. The evocative name Book of Thoth did not fade with antiquity. It was rediscovered and repurposed by occultists from the 18th century onward, who often linked their own mystical systems to the fabled wisdom of Thoth. Three notable currents can be highlighted: the interpretation of the tarot as the Book of Thoth, the channeling of new Thothian texts in modern occult orders, and Aleister Crowley's influential Book of Thoth, treatise on tarot. Tarot as the Book of Thoth. In the late Enlightenment era, as Europe developed an occult fascination with Egypt, some esoteric scholars speculated that the tarot deck of cards preserved the pages of Egypt's long-lost wisdom. The French occultist Jean-Baptiste Hazlett, known as Italia, was the first to popularize this idea. In 1785, Italia published a treatise on tarot where he asserted that the game of tarot derived directly from the legendary Book of Thoth, a magical text of ancient Egypt, and that by studying the cards, one could rediscover this ancient knowledge. Italia even retitled his illustrated deck Le Livre de Thoth, the Book of Thoth. Each tarot trump, he claimed, corresponded to a page of Hermetic lore surviving from Egyptian priests. Though historically untrue, tarot cards first appeared in 15th century Italy as playing cards. This bold rebranding caught on. Subsequent occultists, Eliphas Levi, Gerald Ancos or Pappas, and members of the French esoteric societies adopted the view that tarot symbols were hieroglyphs of Hermes Thoth. For example, in 1857, Eliphas Levi wrote that the 22 major arcana of tarot formed the sacred alphabet of the Hermetic teachings. The legendary Atelier tarot deck, with its Egyptianized imagery, spread through France and beyond. By the 19th century, it was commonly called the Book of Thoth Atelier. Thus, the concept of the tarot as a pictorial epitome of Thoth's wisdom became a staple of Western occultism. It was said that Atelier described tarot cards as pages from the Book of Thoth, linking every card symbolism back to Egyptian magical philosophy. Aleister Crowley's The Book of Thoth, 1944. The lineage of Thoth tarot symbolism culminated in the work of Aleister Crowley, the English occultist and founder of Thelema. Crowley, together with artist Lady Frida Harris, designed a new tarot deck in the 1940s, rich with Kabbalistic, astrological, and Egyptian motifs, explicitly naming it the Thoth Tarot. The Thoth Tarot. To accompany the deck, Crowley wrote the Book of Thoth, a short essay on the tarot of the Egyptians, consciously hearkening back to the mythic book of secret wisdom. In this treatise, Crowley expounds the symbolism of each tarot card and interprets the entire deck as encapsulating esoteric knowledge from ancient Egypt and the Hermetic Kabbalah. Notably, Crowley acknowledges the Egyptian mythology of the Book of Thoth as an influence. He portrays the tarot as a multifaceted compendium that draws on a wide range of esoteric systems, including ceremonial magic, astrology, alchemy, the Book of Thoth in Egyptian mythology, and the religious philosophy of Thelema. In Crowley's syncretic view, the Egyptian god Thoth had guided the creation of the tarot's archetypal images, and these images, properly understood, could unlock profound magical insights. Crowley even claimed a kind of direct inspiration from Thoth. In Thelema's cosmology, Thoth is identified with the god Tahuti, a spiritual guide. It is interesting that Crowley, in the introduction to his Book of Thoth, remarks on the historical perception of writing as magical. He notes that in earlier times, when literacy was rare, writing itself was considered magical and printing an invention of the devil, which made it natural to regard enigmatic scripts like hieroglyphs as living, potent symbols. Crowley thus placed his own work in continuity with the age-old awe for sacred letters. His Book of Thoth remains a seminal text in modern tarot studies and magic, reinforcing the idea that the deck is effectively a contemporary Book of Thoth, an accessible repository of Hermetic wisdom distilled into symbolic form. The Book of Thoth's mystique also found its way into various occult orders and writing. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a late 19th century magical society, incorporated Egyptian gods and Enochian magic, and we'll talk more on that a little bit later in this broadcast, into its rituals. One of its knowledge lectures on tarot was called Book T, possibly alluding to Thoth. Prominent occultists like Samuel Liddell McGregor Mathers and Aleister Crowley, both Golden Dawn initiates, were deeply interested in resurrecting ancient Egyptian magical motifs. Crowley's own fraternity, the AA, styled some of its secret teachings as received from higher beings, a pattern reminiscent of claiming authority from Thoth or Hermes. In fiction and pseudo-history, the Book of Thoth also appears. For instance, in H.P. Lovecraft's stories, it is an ominous grimoire of hidden lore. And in modern esoteric circles, some have linked it speculatively to mysterious artifacts like the Emerald Tablet or the Voynich manuscript. These extensions need not detain us, except to note that the name Book of Thoth became a shorthand for any arcane compendium of magical knowledge. In summary, through the occult revival, Thoth's book lived on as a powerful metaphor. Whether through tarot cards or channeled writings, occultists consistently invoked the imprimatur of Thoth Hermes to lend gravity to their systems, consciously placing themselves in a tradition that stretches back to pharaonic temple scribes. Sumerian cuneiform, writing and magic at the dawn of history. Having examined Egyptian concepts, it is illuminating to compare another of humanity's earliest writing systems, Sumerian cuneiform, and its relationship to magic. The Sumerians of Mesopotamia developed writing around 3200 BC in the city of Uruk, initially as pictographs for economic accounting. Over centuries, the system evolved into the cuneiform script, used to write not only Sumerian, but later Akkadian and other languages. While the practical origins of cuneiform differ from the sacred myths surrounding Egyptian hieroglyphs, the Mesopotamians nonetheless came to regard writing as a divine endowment and a potent tool in spiritual matters. In Sumerian religion, the patron of writing and scribal arts was the goddess Nisaba. Originally a grain goddess, reflecting how writing began as record-keeping for harvests, Nisaba took on a scholarly role as writing grew in importance. She was called the scribe of the gods, said to keep accounts even for the gods' assemblies. Enki, the god of wisdom, was mythically credited with giving Nisaba the art of writing and setting up a tablet house or school for her to teach both mortals and other deities. In Sumerian hymns, Nisaba is praised as she who teaches the degrees, meaning divine laws to humanity, with the invention of literacy explicitly attributed to her inspiration. This is strikingly similar to the claims about Thoth in Egypt. Sumerian scribes honored Nisaba in their work. Many clay tablets, especially student exercises and literary texts, end with the pious phrase, Nisaba be praised, invoking the goddess's favor on the finished writing. In later times, during the Babylonian Empire, Nabu, a male deity, son of the chief god Marduk, superseded Nisaba as the god of writing and wisdom. Nabu was depicted with a stylus and tablet, and his temple in Borsippa housed the Mesopotamian archives of scholarly tablets. But significantly, even as a new deity, Nabu was said to take over Nisaba's functions, sometimes being described as her student or even spouse before he replaced her. This smooth transition suggests a continuous reverence for the act of writing itself as sacred. The Assyrians and Babylonians regard Nabu as the divine patron of scribes, much as Egyptians did Thoth. In Neo-Assyrian royal inscriptions, kings frequently call themselves the beloved of Nabu to emphasize their literacy and wisdom. On the first day of each new year in Babylonia, a festival hymn, the Nisaba hymn, was sung, and Nabu's statue was paraded, underlining that writing and accounting were fundamental to maintaining cosmic and social order. Unlike Egypt, Mesopotamia left no explicit narrative of a book of divine magic being hidden and found. For a long time, scholars believed there was no Mesopotamian myth about the origin of writing, aside from a short legend in the Epic of En-Merkar. However, recent research by Annette Zegal has reconstructed a Sumerian creation myth of writing. In this myth, the goddess Nisaba creates writing in order to record a sacred song that the supreme god Enlil sings at creation, thus preserving his words for eternity. If this interpretation is correct, it means that the Mesopotamians themselves conceived writing not just as a transactional tool, but as something the gods devised to immortalize the divine song, effectively to capture the power of a god's speech in lasting form. Zegal's analysis further shows that Mesopotamians saw many of their texts as sacred texts, a common colophon on Sumerian tablets. It is interpreted as acknowledging that the text's content was inspired by or dedicated to the goddess. From an internal emic perspective, then, the written works were regarded as having numinous origin, being texts created by the gods and therefore imbued with holiness. This has major implications. It suggests that by the time writing was fully established, the Mesopotamians retroactively sacralized it. The ultimate purpose of writing was seen as ritualistic and magical, not merely economic. Indeed, Zegal argues that from the Mesopotamian viewpoint, the decisive function of the creation of writing was seen not in overcoming economic challenges, but in coping with ritual needs. In other words, they believed writing was invented to fulfill a spiritual requirement, preserving divine utterances and rituals, rather than the mundane needs that modern historians emphasize. While Sumerian farmers may have first pressed symbols into clay to tally grain, Sumerian priests soon pressed cuneiform onto clay to record hymns, incantations, omens, and myths, effectively transforming those clay tablets into magical objects that carried prayers and spells to future generations and to the gods. Mesopotamian civilization has left a vast corpus of magical texts inscribed on clay tablets. For example, there are Sumerian and Akkadian incantations to be recited for healing or protection, often accompanied by written rituals. One particular class of artifacts, the Mesopotamian incantation bowls from the late antiquity period, influenced by earlier traditions, involved inscribing a spiraling Aramaic or Mandaic incantation on a ceramic bowl and then burying it under a house to trap or ward off demons. This shows the idea that the written spell itself had active power to constrain spiritual entities. Another famous concept is the Tablet of Destinies, or the Sumerian Dup Shamati in Mesopotamian myth. The Tablet of Destinies was believed to be a physical clay tablet inscribed with cuneiform that conferred upon its holder the divine right to rule the universe. In the Babylonian Enuma Elish creation epic, the god Marduk gains supreme authority after defeating Tiamat and claiming the Tablet of Destinies, which he places on his breast as a symbol of ultimate power. Earlier in an Akkadian myth, the bird god Anzu steals the tablet from Enlil, causing cosmic disorder until it is relieved. What matters is that the tablet is depicted as an inscribed object of power, a clay tablet inscribed with cuneiform writing, also impressed with cylinder seals, which, as a permanent legal document, conferred upon the god Enlil his supreme authority as ruler of the universe. The writing on it embodies the mes, the divine decrees or fates. Possessing the written tablet means one can alter destiny itself. Later folklore even imagined the tablet could grant any wish inscribed on it up to 5 times, showing a clear belief in the omnipotence of the written word to shape reality. This is a direct parallel to the Egyptian idea that writing the names of things gives dominion over them. Mesopotamian literature is also ripe with references to the tablets of wisdom. The hero Gilgamesh, after his worldly adventures, is said to have inscribed his story on stone tablets and set them in the walls of Uruk, implying the enduring power of the written account. In the tale of Adapa, the sage Adapa breaks the wing of the south wind and is summoned to heaven. He is advised by Enki on what to say, effectively given a script, and thereby navigates the trial before Anu. This advisory script can be seen as a forerunner of later grimoires or ritual texts, albeit mythologized. In practice, Mesopotamian exorcists called Asipu and diviners, Baru, were learned scribes who consulted written manuals of omens, performed rituals by reading standardized prayers, and even wrote out amulets and curses. Many of them concluded their tablets with praise be to Nisaba or Nabu, or even admonitions that a copied tablet had to be returned to the tablet house to guard the secrecy and proper use of the knowledge. All of this indicates that writing carried a sacral, supernatural weight in Mesopotamia. It was a domain of specialists, scribes trained in Aduba schools, very much like a priestly craft. The ordinary populace, mostly illiterate, likely viewed the cuneiform-covered tablets as mysterious, much as medieval peasants viewed Latin grimoires. It is telling that the Akkadian word for scribe, tupsar, literally means tablet writer. Yet scribes also functioned as ritual experts. When Assyrian kings collected library tablets, they often sought rituals and incantations of the ancient sages, essentially early magic books. In summary, although the cultural context differed, the Mesopotamian view aligns with the broader thesis that early writing systems were infused with magical significance. In both Egypt and Mesopotamia, literacy was a gate to esoteric knowledge and spiritual power. As one specialist succinctly puts it, ancient Mesopotamia was a culture based on sacred texts, and those texts were revered as embodiments of divine speech used to summon up supernatural forces in rituals. The mythic scribes, whether Thoth with his papyrus scroll or Nabu with his stylus and clay, were seen as orchestrators of creation and fate. Now we move on to the angelic script of John Dee, Enochian writing as magic. Jumping forward many millennia to the Renaissance occult revival, we encounter a striking parallel to the ancient notions of magical writing. The case of John Dee's Enochian alphabet, sometimes called the language of angels. In the late 16th century, Dr. John Dee, an esteemed mathematician, astrologer, and advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, embarked on a bold attempt to communicate with celestial intelligences to learn the secrets of creation. From 1581 onward, Dee, aided by a scryer medium, Edward Kelly, held a series of seances or scrying sessions in which they claimed angels revealed to them an entirely new language and script. According to Dee's detailed journals, which still exist, the angels, principally the archangel Uriel, and entities speaking through Kelly, presented the duo with tables of letters, mysterious dictations, and ultimately a full alphabet with 21 characters. Some accounts say 22, along with strange, unpronounceable angelical words. Dee referred to this language as angelic or Adamical, believing it to be the original tongue of humanity or of angels in heaven, perhaps the language spoken by Adam and Eden before the fall. The modern term Enochian came later from Dee's references to the biblical patriarch Enoch. In one session, the angels told Dee and Kelly that this was the language by which Enoch had conversed with God and angels, tying it to antediluvian wisdom. Just as many occultists of the time surmised that Hebrew or other ancient languages held primeval truths. Indeed, it directly conflicted with the 16th century belief that God, Adam, and Eve spoke in Hebrew, as Dee noted. The angels asserted Enochian was a holier and older form. Over a span of a few years, Dee and Kelly were given a series of Enochian texts. These included the Enochian alphabet, letters with names like Pa, Ve, Ged, etc., the table of 49 good angels, Heptarchia, and the calls or keys, which are 48 poetic orations in the Enochian language, intended to invoke angels from various heavenly ethers or realms. What is remarkable in this process is the emphasis of the act of writing as part of the magical work. The angels didn't just transmit spoken words. They often had Kelly watch a vision of an angel pointing to letters on a grid or a table, the so-called holy table, that Dee constructed, engraved with the Enochian letters. Kelly would then name the letters, and Dee would carefully write them down in a matrix, sometimes backwards or in specific patterns as instructed. The reception of the largest component, the Liber Logath, or Book of Speeches from God, consisted of 49 great tables of 49 by 49 letters, allegedly dictated by angels, one letter at a time, to form a huge coded text. Dee diligently wrote every letter as told, ending with a massive, almost inscrutable grid of letters, which he believed contained layers of angelic mysteries. In their operative workings, the written letters themselves were key. For example, Dee's instructions for summoning angels involved drawing the Enochian letters on tablets, invoking the names spelled out by certain letter combinations, and intoning the calls, which are themselves lengthy written compositions. The Holy Table in their seances had Enochian letters inscribed around its edge and on a central seal, as if to create a matrix of written power that allowed angelic beings to manifest. In short, the entire system was based on the premise that the letters of a non-human script carry the vibrational keys to connecting with spiritual entities. This is directly analogous to earlier magic's reliance on barbarous names or sigils, except that here a whole language was delivered. John Dee's Enochian magic can rightly be seen as a Renaissance form of writing as magic. A modern encyclopedia summarizes. Enochian magic is a system of Renaissance magic developed by John Dee and Edward Kelly, rooted in the revelation of the Enochian language and script, which Dee wrote were delivered to them directly by angels during their mystical interactions. Central to the practice is the invocation and command of various spiritual beings using that language. In his diary for 13th April 1584, for instance, Dee records the first Enochian key dictated in full, which is a 21-letter alphabet and a grandiloquent oration, and he expresses awe at hearing the angels speak in a tongue no man knows. To him, this confirmed it was the lingua angelorum, inherently potent. Over time, skepticism rose. Kelly's credibility was often doubted, but the detailed preservation of the material in Dee's spirit diaries ensured that later generations could revive it. Indeed, the 19th century Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn incorporated Enochian magic into their rituals heavily, effectively modernizing Dee's system. The Golden Dawn members, like S.L. Mathers and W. Wynne Westcott, reconstructed Dee's truncated records and assigned Enochian letters to the Kabbalistic tree of life, elemental attributions, etc. This adaptation in the late 1800s reignited interest in Enochian practices, further embedding them within broader Western esoteric traditions. Aleister Crowley, too, was drawn to Enochian. In 1909, he famously conducted a series of visionary experiences called The Vision and the Voice, using the Enochian calls to explore the 30 ethers, or spiritual planes. Crowley learned to recite Enochian and regarded it as a powerful tool of ceremonial magic. He even included some Enochian keys and rituals of the AA and OTO. From an historical perspective, Enochian script is noteworthy as a rare instance of an entirely new writing system being introduced into the Western magical corpus. In antiquity, one had Egyptian hieroglyphs and Mesopotamian cuneiform as sacred scripts. By the Renaissance, scholars were entranced by Hebrew, Greek, and Egyptian. Though the latter not yet deciphered, it was thought to be symbolic. Dee, however, presented a revealed alphabet not traceable to any human culture, supposedly angelic. The alphabet's letters are curvilinear and, unlike Latin characters, adding to their aura of mystique. To practitioners, writing an Enochian letter was like directly tapping an angelic frequency. We might compare this to the use of magical alphabets in earlier grimoires. For example, the Malachim or Passing the River scripts in medieval Kabbalistic magic, or the Theban alphabet popularized by Cornelius Agrippa. Those were cipher scripts for Hebrew or Latin letters, used to obscure and sanctify written spells. But Enochian went a step further. It claimed to be not a cipher, but a true divine language with its own grammar and vocabulary, which could command spirits precisely because it was the language they natively understood. This concept harkens back to the mythic idea of the language of creation. In Kabbalah, God spoke Hebrew to create the world. In Islam, Arabic is the celestial tongue of revelation. Similarly, Dee's angels posited Enochian as the creative tongue by which Adam named things. The implication is that writing in the original God-given language grants authority over creation, an idea shared across many mystical traditions. Despite its unconventional origin, the Enochian alphabet is now entrenched in Western occult practice. Its letters and calls are included in countless occult compendia. The very act of learning to draw the Enochian characters accurately is considered by some as magical training. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, as mentioned above, wove Enochian squares and calls into elaborate ceremonies for summoning elementals or traversing spiritual realms. Through the 20th century, groups like the Ordo Aurum Solis and various Thelemic lodges continued to experiment with Enochian. This demonstrates a continuity of the theme. To write in a sacred script is to perform magic. Whether it is a Sumerian priest writing on clay or a Golden Dawn adept tracing Enochian sigils in the air, the underlying premise is the same. The form of the written symbols, empowered by divine origin, has effect on unseen realities. All right, so now we're going to talk about comparative reflections, sacred writing systems, and magical ideation. Stepping back, we can draw comparative insights from the cases discussed: Egyptian hieroglyphs, Mesopotamian cuneiform, and the later Enochian angelic script, along with other early writing traditions not yet touched upon, such as Hebrew and its mystical alphabets or Norse runes. A number of common themes emerge. Divine origin myths. Most ancient writing systems became associated with a myth of divine or semi-divine origin. We saw that Thoth was credited as inventor of Egyptian writing, Nisaba and later Nabu as inventor of Sumerian Akkadian writing, and in post-biblical legend, the Hebrew alphabet was sometimes ascribed to the archangel Metatron or to the Torah given by God. Even in cultures where we lacked textual myths, later tradition supplied them. The Greeks, encountering cuneiform tablets, assumed they must be the work of ancient sages or gods. In the case of runes, the Norse poem Havamai relates that the god Odin sacrificed himself, hanging on the world tree for 9 nights to learn the runes, which even the powerful gods did not know, implying the runes or letters were a primordial cosmic secret that even gods had to strive to obtain. After his ordeal, Odin took up the runes, screaming, "I took them," a shamanic initiation into knowledge, after which he passed the runes to humans. This is strikingly parallel to the quest of the Book of Thoth or the Tablets of Destiny, the idea that writing is a prize of great peril and value wrestled from the divine realm. In each case, the myth conveys that writing is far more than a human invention. It is a gift or prize from the gods containing potent creative power. Then we have writing in cosmic order. Once established, writing was often tied to the maintenance of cosmic or social order. In Egypt, the preservation of Ma'at, divine order and truth, was partly accomplished through the perpetual reinscription of rituals, offering formulas, royal names, and so on, literally writing reality into stability. Thoth was sometimes depicted as recording the verdict of the scales in the Hall of Judgment, weighing the soul's heart against truth, underscoring that the written record validates truth. In Mesopotamia, kings would assert their legitimacy by burying foundation tablets under temples and palaces, inscribed with their dedication and curses upon any to remove them. A magical act to secure their reign through written spells. The Tablet of Destinies myth we discussed shows that for Mesopotamians, the universe's stability resided in a written tablet, an extraordinary notion that essentially makes writing the linchpin of reality. Similarly, Hebrew tradition in the Second Temple period developed the idea that there were celestial tablets or books in which God had written the destiny of nations and individuals seen in apocalyptic literature. The concept of the Book of Life in Judeo-Christian thought, where the names of the righteous are inscribed for salvation, likely has roots in earlier Mesopotamian and Egyptian scribal magical imagery. Everywhere to be unwritten was to be damned or lost. To be well written in a metaphorical sense was to be aligned with the cosmos. The mindset naturally grants the act of writing a sacred dimension. Scribes were not merely clerks, they were custodians of fate and memory. And then there's restricted knowledge and initiation. Across cultures, the ability to write and read was typically restricted to a specialized class of scribes, priests, magicians, and scholars. This exclusivity reinforced the mystique of writing. In Egypt, as noted, scribal education took place in the House of Life within temple precincts, and some texts, especially those dealing with advanced magic or science, were kept secret, intended only for initiated eyes. Formulas at the end of certain Egyptian magical texts warn that unauthorized copying or revelation to the uninitiated is forbidden by the gods on pain of curse. Likewise, in Mesopotamia, advanced astronomical texts or divine omen lists were often labeled Secret of the Gods, or Niz Dingir, and only taught to select trainees. In the medieval and Renaissance period, this dynamic continued. Occult books were circulated in manuscripts among adepts, or often in cipher or foreign tongues to avoid prying by laypersons. John Dee himself was quite secretive with his angelic diaries. Some he buried, others were lost for centuries before resurfacing. The grimoires, or Latin for grammar books, of medieval magic were written in convoluted scripts with astrological signs and biblical names precisely to remain arcane. All this contributes to the aura that writing, especially strange or sacred writing, is inherently magical because it is arcane. The term occult means hidden. Script literally encodes, hides meaning. Thus, esoteric tradition often equated acquiring literacy in the sacred language with initiation into higher mysteries. As one Renaissance Kabbalist wrote, to study the holy letters is to step into the rank of angels. Magical scripts and symbols. The use of special alphabets for magical purposes is a recurrent phenomenon. We have seen the ultimate example with Enochian. But even before D, medieval Kabbalists designed alternate alphabets, the celestial alphabet, the Transistus Fluvii, etc., to write charms in a way thought to engage angelic powers. These are essentially symbolic transcriptions of Hebrew, the idea being that Hebrew itself is holy, but these variant characters are more abstruse and thus even more occult. The Norse runes similarly served both as letters and as magical signs. The same rune could be inscribed in an inscription to convey a meaning, or inscribed repetitively or inverted to serve as an amulet or curse. For example, the Sigurd Frumia, another Norse text, I butchered that, speaks of victory runes carved on a sword to ensure triumph, and healing runes carved on bark to cure, etc. Each time the act of inscribing is the key to releasing the rune's power. In the Greek magical papyri of 3rd century AD, we find so-called characteres, letters of undecipherable, or lines of undecipherable letters, or geometric glyphs, included in spells likely to be copied as is by the practitioner. The characteres were thought to be letters that gods or daemons understand, even if they were non-lexical to humans. In essence, they are proto-Enochian strings, writing for the spirit's eyes. Then there's the persistence of this idea throughout the Renaissance. When the Renaissance occultists like Ficino, Pico, Reuchlin, and later Agrippa, D, etc., look back to antiquity, they actively synthesize these ideas. Ficino's oration to the Academy in 1477, De Stella Magorum, argued that ancient theologians, Zoroaster, Orpheus, Hermes, etc., knew the secret correspondences of letters, stars, and angels, and that by words and symbols, humans could draw down divine influence. The Christian Kabbalists particularly elevated the Hebrew tetragrammaton and other divine names as miraculous logos. Some went so far as to claim that by permuting letters of God's name, one could work miracles, an idea derived from the Jewish Kabbalist doctrine of Sefer Yetzirah, which taught that God engraved the universe with the 22 Hebrew letters. An example is Johann Reuchlin's text, De Verbo Mirifico, of 1494, which praises the Hebrew name of Jesus spelt in Hebrew letters as containing cosmic power. Later, Cornelius Agrippa, in De Occulta Philosophia, in 1533, devotes entire chapters to the virtues of characters and magical writing. He writes, the letters of the Hebrews, Chaldean, and Egyptian languages are not like others, but are the very forms and instruments of the cosmos, showing the belief that certain scripts are inherently empowered by their shape and origin. Agrippa provides tablets of celestial alphabet, Malachim, Theban, etc., explaining that these were invented by ancient sages to communicate with angels or to hide secrets from the unworthy. The Theban alphabet, also called the Onarian alphabet, is one such script he popularized. It became nicknamed the witches' alphabet in later folklore. This tradition continued in the Rosicrucian and free Masonic movements of the 17th and 18th centuries, where tracing boards and temple rituals often involved inscribed symbols. For instance, the Freemasons used Hebrew letters and geometric symbols as part of their allegories of Solomon's temple and Hiram's craft. In these later examples, the pattern is clear. Writing and magic were never truly separated. Even as rationalism grew, the occult underground clung to the idea that somewhere there's a book, a script, a word that unlocks the mysteries of the universe, be it the Book of Thoth, the occult tarot, the ephod of the high priest with sacred letters, or the encrypted pages of a grimoire. Then there's the Renaissance occult revival, the synthesis of ancient currents. By the Renaissance period, between the 15th and 17th centuries, Europe witnessed a conscious revival of ancient magical philosophies, and at the heart of this revival lay a deep fascination with ancient languages and texts. This era effectively bridged antiquity with modern occultism by collecting, translating, and reinterpreting the sacred writings of earlier ages. We have already highlighted the role of the Hermetic corpus being translated by Ficino under Cosimo de' Medici's patronage. Ficino's translation presented Hermes Trismegistus as a sage who taught of the one God in the celestial hierarchy using a philosophical mode. It was complemented by the Greek magical papyri, some small fragments of which were becoming known via Byzantine copies, and by Kabbalistic texts brought from Jewish tradition into Christian occult circles. Pico della Mirandola famously sought to reconcile Hermeticism, Kabbalah, and Christianity in his 900 Theses of 1486, asserting that the Prisca Theologia could be found in these sources. Notably, Pico argued that the Hebrew letters and the names of God possess the highest efficiency in magic, but also that the Hermetic texts confirm the glory of Moses, effectively uniting Thoth's literature with Mosaic lore. In his oration on the dignity of man, Pico extolled human beings' capacity to ascend the chain of being, suggesting that by the power of knowledge symbolized by writing, mankind could even become angelic. The later Renaissance saw thinkers like Heinrich Cornelius, Agrippa, and John Dee push this synthesis further. Agrippa, in Occult Philosophy of 1533, compiled an encyclopedic account of all known occult correspondences, astrological, angelic, alchemical, etc., including magical uses of letters, numbers, and geometrical figures. He considered the Hebrew alphabet as divinely ordained and wrote that the shapes of the letters and their numerical values conceal deep mysteries. Following the medieval Sefer Yetzirah, Agrippa noted that the Hebrew letters were divided into mother, double, and elemental letters correlating to elements, planets, and zodiac signs. Such analyses were not idle. They informed practical attempts of theurgical magic aimed at spiritual communion. The idea was that by pronouncing or inscribing the correct names of God or angels in the correct script, one could call forth these entities or at least gain their favor. This is precisely what we observe in grimoires or books of magic of that era, like the Key of Solomon, where the magician must inscribe pentagrams with Hebrew, Latin, divine names around the circle or write certain psalms onto parchment as talismans. The correctness of the writing, orthography, purity of ink, often with special inks, even astrological timing of writing was considered crucial to success. It's a telling continuation of the advanced ancient intuition that the written word, carefully prepared, creates change in unseen realms. Then we have John Dee, who combined the Hermetic, Kabbalistic, and perhaps even Neoplatonic frameworks. As we covered, Dee's angelic communications in the 1580s gave both to the Enochian alphabet and calls, an event that we can view as the Renaissance culmination of the quest for Adamic language. Many learned people of the time were actually searching for the language of Adam, believing that the confusion of tongues at Babel had obscured it. Some thought Hebrew was it. Others proposed variants or pure forms of other tongues. Dee's angels flatly claimed this, Enochian, was the true pre-Babel speech. This bold claim shows the Renaissance mindset, the willingness to revisit biblical and classical ideas and even supplant them with new ancient revelations, if it meant reclaiming original wisdom. Language itself became an object of mysticism, and because writing is language made visible, scripts too became mystical objects. In Dee's work, the act of writing Enochian characters was literally part of the ritual to invoke angels, highlighting once more that writing and magic converged. Another fascinating Renaissance figure is Athanasius Kircher, a Jesuit polymath who, through post-Renaissance, inherited the Renaissance occult curiosity. Kircher tried to decipher Egyptian hieroglyphs before Champollion, with the assumption that they were not a phonetic script but a purely symbolic, magical language conveying philosophical truths. In his massive work, Oedipus Egyptiacus, Kircher proposed translations of hieroglyphs that read like Hermetic allegories. Though wrong in method, hieroglyphs are largely phonetic. Kircher's intuition was that the Egyptian writing contained layers of esoteric meaning, an idea very much in line with the whole tradition we've traced. Kircher also studied Hebrew Kabbalah and Chinese ideograms, attempting a kind of universal theory of symbolic writing. This universalist approach was indeed the twilight of the Renaissance occult revival, soon to be overtaken by the Enlightenment's more skeptical view. But Kircher serves as a barometer. Even as late as the 17th century, erudite minds were treating ancient scripts as repositories of magical wisdom, reflecting the persistent aura of writing as magic. By the end of the Renaissance, however, a backlash was underway. The scholar Isaac Casaubon in 1614 applied philological analysis to the Hermetic corpus and demonstrated it was not of pharaonic origin but of Hellenistic post-Christian composition. This revelation, along with the rise of mechanical science and rational philosophy, with Descartes, Bacon, etc., undermined the credibility of the very ancient sources that occultists had held dear. Hermes Trismegistus was demoted in status from proto-prophet to syncretic mystagogue. The prestige of Hebrew also shifted. While still respected, scholarly study of languages became more grounded and less mystical, leading eventually to modern linguistics. By the 18th century, the open practice of magic using writing largely retreated into secret societies or folk practice. The age of grimoires slowly gave way to the age of scientific texts. Yet even during the so-called Enlightenment, undercurrents remained. For instance, Freemasonry still used Hebrew letters and biblical inscriptions in its lodges to invoke ancient authority, and Rosicrucian-influenced works like those of William Sterling or later William Blake continued to play with Kabbalistic and hieroglyphic imagery. In the 19th century, the pendulum swung again with the occult revival, the Theosophical Society, Golden Dawn, etc., reviving interest in these earlier threads. By then, Champollion had deciphered hieroglyphs in the 1820s, ironically demystifying them by revealing them to be largely phonetic and not abstruse symbols of cosmic truth. Yet occultists simply transferred their awe to things like the newly discovered Papyrus of Ani, or the Book of the Dead, and other Egyptian religious texts, treating them as magical texts to be mined for esoteric content. The influence is evident in the start of Stanislas de Guaita or Paladin, or the rituals of the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor. Aleister Crowley in Book of Thoth in 1944 stands as a modern echo of all this legacy. He consciously integrated Egyptian, Kabbalistic, and Hermetic letter magic into his thelemic system. Tellingly, Crowley claimed that his own Book of the Law in 1904 was dictated to him by a praetor human intelligence in Cairo, a scene strongly reminiscent of an initiatory transmission of scripture, be it Thoth's book on an angelic message. Crowley's high esteem for the Tarot as the Book of Thoth synthesized centuries of speculation that the ancients hid their wisdom in symbolic sets. I'm just going to take a quick breath. Good Lord. All right. In reviewing the long history of the Book of Thoth and the idea of writing as magic, we find a remarkable consistency in belief across different ages and cultures. The written word, especially in its most ancient or sacred form, has been seen as a vessel of supernatural power. The Egyptian mythology of Thoth crystallized the notion that writing was divinely ordained, a magic art that could capture the voices of gods and spirits. The mythical Book of Thoth epitomized this belief. It was not merely a book of rituals, but a magical artifact in its own right, capable of conferring wisdom or wreaking havoc depending on the morality of its user. Such stories warn that knowledge itself is power, and power in unworthy hands is perilous. Hermetic and Gnostic traditions carried this theme forward, treating esoteric texts as living repositories of ancient power to be decoded by the enlightened. Comparative analysis with Mesopotamian, Hebraic, and other traditions reinforces that this was not uniquely Egyptian. From the cuneiform tablets of destiny granting cosmic rule to the Hebrew Sefer Yetzirah describing creation via letters of the alphabet to the runic spells of the Norse and the sigils of the medieval Magus. Again and again, we see the conviction that symbols and scripts are not passive. They affect reality. A clay tablet with the right inscription might protect a house from demons. A parchment inscribed with holy names might heal the sick. Conversely, an incorrect or impious writing could bring misfortune. Hence why so much emphasis was placed on correctness and secrecy in magical writings. Writing was often aligned with the concept of the logos, the creative word. Thus, mastering letters was akin to mastering the building blocks of creation. By the Renaissance, the interplay of Egyptian, Hermetic, and occultist interpretations of the Book of Thoth produced a rich syncretism. Thoth, as Hermes, gave Europeans the idea of Prisca Theologia, an ancient theology uniting magic and religion. The Book of Thoth, in a broad sense, came to mean the entire lore of the Egyptians, Hermes, which Renaissance scholars sought in manuscripts and imagined in mysterious hieroglyphs. Occultists like Italia and Crowley then took the extra step of declaring their own symbolic systems, Tarot, to be that Book of Thoth revisited. In doing so, they consciously identified with a lineage of secret knowledge stretching back to Egypt and Sumer. Crowley's observation that in earlier ages writing itself was considered magical is borne out by our exploration. Indeed, to ancient eyes, the scribe was a sorcerer of sorts, and every script a spell. Scholarly analysis of this phenomenon, backed by historical texts, allows us to appreciate the logic behind it. In largely oral societies, writing was inherently wondrous, a technology of immortality. It preserved words beyond death and of control. It enabled laws, contracts, astronomical calculations. It is no surprise that writing was attributed to gods like Thoth or Odin. And because knowledge is power, the written preservation of knowledge was seen as the seat of that power. The physicality of writing, inscriptions on temple walls, curved stelae, ink on papyrus or parchment, gave a sense of permanence to magic. A spoken spell fades after utterance, but a written spell continues to work as long as the text exists. Thus, tomb inscriptions protected tombs for millennia. Cursed tablets buried in 500 BC might still contain the curse centuries later when unearthed. Writing externalized human intention and linked it, in the pre-modern worldview, to the eternal realm of ideas or deities. In light of all this, the Book of Thoth legend may be read as more than just a fanciful tale. It is a cultural allegory of the double-edged nature of knowledge. Thoth's book granted divine perception, but exacted a high price when misused. The same duality can be seen in the biblical story of Eden's forbidden knowledge or Prometheus's stolen fire. In each case, the medium of transgression, be it a fruit, fire, or book, symbolizes a form of enlightenment humanity craves. Writing as the storage of knowledge is such enlightenment. Little wonder medieval monks sometimes depicted the inventor of writing, whom they identified as the biblical Enoch or the Egyptian Hermes, in ambivalent light. Was he a wise man, or did he open a Pandora's box? The Hermetic answer was that wisdom must be veiled. Hence Hermes Trismegistus, writing encoded hymns and symbols only for the worthy. The occultists of the Renaissance likewise operated in half secrecy, publishing in Latin, circulating manifestos anonymously, using allegory, effectively mimicking the pattern of the ancient mystery books. In conclusion, the concept of writing as magic has a pedigree as old as writing itself. From the first clay tablets and hieroglyphic inscriptions to the elaborations of mystics and magi, the written sign has been invested with an aura of sacred power. The Book of Thoth, whether as a literal mythic artifact or as a metaphor for the collective sacred writings of a culture, embodies the reverence ancient peoples had for the written word. As one modern summary aptly put it, the association of writing with magic gave rise to the belief that Thoth had written magical treatises based on all he knew of the heavens, the earth, and the afterlife, and that these books were hidden away to be found by the initiates of later generations. This belief proved extraordinarily persistent. It carried through the Hermetic literature, enhanced or enchanted the Renaissance humanists, and is still alive today in today's esoteric circles that hunt for lost manuscripts and channeled texts. In a sense, our entire written cultural heritage, philosophy, science, scripture is a grand book of Thoth that humanity continues to decipher. And while modern science demystifies much, the fundamental magic of writing remains. By arranging symbols on a page, one mind can spark ideas in others, even across thousands of years. The ancients would not be surprised by this almost occult transmission of thought. For them, it was always known that in the beginning was the word. The written word, especially, was a gift of the gods, a tool to bridge the mortal and the divine. In every careful stroke of brush on papyrus or stylus on clay, there was an echo of Thoth's own pen and a spark of creation. All right, folks, that ends the prepared portion of tonight's show. So let's see what folks have to say if this thing actually closes. All right. Wow. I'm looking at the comments, and there's like at least 142 comments that I haven't touched. So before I do that, let me just throw in a banner. Just add that as a reminder. All right. Well, I'm about to get feedback, so this should be fun. Good Lord. There we go. All right. Yeah, but we slowed down, Philip. So Philip Blair is saying pretty close already at 18.6K. Yeah, but that means that, in November and December, if we froze it today in October, I would have to get, well, I guess that's 1,400. Yeah, I would need 700 new subscribers a month. Before I had that big jump, I had some terrible months where I only got like 285. So I'd rather stack the deck in October, and then, because even 500 a month is dicey for the last 2 months. So like, even if I got to 19,000 by the end of this month, it's a little dicey. But like yesterday, I had a horrible day. I got like 24 subscribers. So, and today is also not going as well, but we'll see. Okay. So Jalay Jalal saying The Nobody's Girl by Virginia Giuffre book out in 3 days. It is already being read aloud on YouTube. Good Lord. At least I'm not reading people's proprietary stuff. Like, that's just bad. Yep. Polyu Paradise is saying, I'm a writer, and I agree it's magical. I'm a writer too, and it is. Hey, Pavlos. Hello, beautiful people. Pavlos is saying it's magical enough to pronounce Thoth correctly so often. I don't know if it's Toth or Thoth, but I did a quick search as I was starting, and there was like no consensus on it. So Polyu Paradise is saying he talks directly to man, though. Yeah, Philip Blair is saying, is this why most of our K through 12 teachers tried to make us hate writing? Probably. Philip Blair said, I never understood why they wanted us to associate writing with pain. The one thing that I did appreciate was sentence diagrams. I don't even know if they still do it. Like that was actually really useful for me. Yeah. Scott Ians writing, vowels, we don't need no stinking vowels. Let's see. Okay, so Jalay Jalal saying the Chinese also have a lot of these techniques. Hey, Gray Al, good to see you. He says, oh, snap, is it Sunday already? H-Day Sean and fine fellow individuals whom through a glass darkly go. Okay, so Jalay Jalal writes, the Kabbalah and Zohar are but sore to hear that Hermes is the one. Hey, Miss Tammy, good to see you. Yeah, I'm definitely well on my way to the recaffeination sequence. For sure, Gray Al. Yep, 44 gnomes. Nice. 42 David the Gnomes. Marsilio Ficino, Philip Blair writes. Jalay Jalal writes, the Chinese feng shui and their dragon traditions with the stems and branches, elements, calendar, star maps with assigned booms and busts. Demon management systems are butt sore. That Hermes is the one. Interesting. No, it's not that expensive. I mean, it is Duncan. So Gray House writing, what's the price of a cup of Joe in California these days? I'm thinking 40 to 50. No, it's for less than $10. At least Duncan. Starbucks is probably higher. Yeah. Jalay Jalal is probably about right. Just maybe $4 or so. Oh wow. Yeah. Jalay Jalal says I drink Pete's. It costs $9 for 2 weeks worth. You probably just buy it and make it at home, I'm guessing. Jalay Jalal says tarot is derived from the Tatwas, a much older system, which is Hindu or even older. Yep. Brown writes, I remember back in the day when the going was good, a man could stop at a gas station in the US and with $30 get some gas in the tank and 5 packs of cigs. Sigh. And a large coffee. Okay. Sorry, folks. I'm just racing through. So Pavlos is saying, I wonder if the physical act of writing is where the magic lies. Typing on glass and making words may take the power out of such writings. Maybe. Sometimes I write longhand because it's easier to be creative. So there's probably something to that. Yeah, Stan Aykroyd is definitely based. And he is Canadian. Jalay Jalal saying, hoping to hit the lottery so we can go to Bosnia and see that pyramid. Yeah, speaking of the lottery, my H-bar investment, which was a total of $11,000, is now worth $7,700. Of course, I don't panic and sell, but that's how things are going there. Scott Ian is saying, Sean, you should do one of these on the Voynich manuscript. Maybe I think it's like a forgery, though, is my understanding. But I'll check if it's not clearly a forgery and there's still some mystery left. Maybe. Okay, the degrees is based on the Sabian symbols and the astrological significance of the chart. Jalay Jalal writes. So Paleo Paradise writes, it's the creation of the thought. Thought, the word, comes from Thoth. Interesting. So your thoughts become words, which transfers thought to another mind. Yeah, there's a book that Stephen King wrote called On Writing, and that's what he says. He basically says writing is a form of telepathy, or writing is telepathy, something like that. Okay. So Gray Owl is saying, Sean, where are you these days on sim hypothesis? It seems to me that it's becoming harder to refute when considering all things, including magic. Yeah, I mean, it's the easiest to explain everything. I just hate that explanation the most. Sorry, I just have a lot of stuff to get through. So if I'm skipping comments, I'm trying to be efficient. So Coffee Stained Mug is saying our current psyche has been a process of symbolic inscriptions. Candles simulate scents. Showers and baths simulate natural water baths. Baths, I guess. Jobs simulate the business of living off the land. Coffee Stained Mug saying it's all a program, yet not in the way we think often. Okay. Okay, sorry about the noise in the background. Hold on. Okay. Just rushing through. It's like an ongoing thread about violence. I'm not going to touch that, just for even the faint hint that I could trigger YouTube. Okay. Yep, bottoms up. I must be close to the end. Okay, Roger Claiborne is writing, magic mostly seems to work for those who truly believe in it. Black magic is useless against those who give it no power at all. Makes you wonder about reality, multidimensional because of its beliefs. It all starts with Lord Zoo. Hey, Angela Cullum. Good to see you. Looks like the crew's calling you out, Angela. They're saying you're late. You probably just didn't comment yet. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Guys, it's all right. Gray House just busting balls. It's fine. Anybody who shows up here, Angela, will notice you. All right. Roger Claiborne is writing, the more skills and knowledge one gains, the more potentials open up for them, or perhaps new potential dimensional realities. Potential is infinite, it seems, but only the portion we come to perceive is accessible. Holy Paradise, what do you so he talked directly, he wanted you to be initiated, but it was meant for people that can make a difference. I'm sure I guess you're talking about Thoth. Gray Owl writes, okay, since the prepared part of the show is over, I'm out of here. Gray Owl writes, laugh out loud. I love how Sean's analysis of the tagged demographics sounds like he's playing the board game Risk. Board game Risk. Now, if I could just take control of the European Western flank in October, I mean, it is basically strategy. Philip Blair is saying moving into fall and winter should bring people to the channel looking for spooky, cool stuff to listen to through the long, dark hours. I sure hope so. Yeah, look up sentence diagrams. You will be blown away if you've never seen them, Philip Blair. Philip Blair writes, I've never heard of sentence diagrams, but I'm looking them up now. I think they probably died shortly after my generation got through grade school. Good night, Angela. Huh. Philip Blair says, listen to radio commercials from the 1950s. You'll get an idea of how much our economy sucks today by comparison. No, don't buy gold. Don't buy gold. It's like a sucker's play now. It reached its high, like when something reaches its highest ever, not a good time to catch a falling because it's soon just I'm not going to give any investment advice. You know, gold might go up a little bit more, but it's more likely to go down than go up because people like average people are starting to get into it. That's when it's like Run away, run away, run away, run away. Yeah, Roger Claiborne says, look at the number of 30-year-olds with families and homes versus 1950s, and you will see how bad the class warfare has gone against the masses. Yeah, agreed. Oh my God. Philip Blair is writing, there's a radio commercial for Ford from the 1950s advertising new Ford cars to single working women. The woman in the commercial is a social worker. Yeah, that's insane. Imagine a single social worker buying a new car in this economy. Philip, I make quite a bit more than that, and I have one car. The family has one car. I mean, I could afford one, but I'd rather just save. Oh, the tone, that's my developmentally disabled daughter stimming. It drives me freaking crazy too, as everybody on this podcast knows. No, I haven't reached out to him yet. Yeah, I still have to. Um, I just been like super busy. Yeah, probably. But just remember though, historically, what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did, he confiscated gold for like depreciated dollars. So just be careful. History has a tendency to repeat itself. About the dude, that's creepy, Gray Al. So hey Sean, speaking of cool and dark, I wonder if you should do another episode with Ish. Can't remember his name. Really great past interviewee. He told stories about doing the dog sled runs. So Gray Al, literally, long before I saw this comment on this very podcast, I was thinking about Laird Barron and thinking about that's his name, Laird Barron. He's a probably one of the best horror writer of his generation. I was just thinking about Laird during this call. I don't know why, but probably because you were going to make a comment. That's weird. Dr. Joe Gallenberger on your show. I still have to look him up. It sounded more mechanical. No, it's probably still her. There was no other sounds. I hope they don't. If they try to confiscate Bitcoin, they're going to have lots of problems. Yeah, yeah, Laird Barron. Yep, two R's though. I think. Um, I think he almost died again because he almost died a few times. Just he's we'll see how it goes. But that was the last comment. How are we doing? We still got like 14 minutes left. What do people want to talk about? Uh, I mean, I just finished editing. What was I going to say? Here's all fucked up. Excuse my language. Just finished editing 6 episodes. I got 2 episodes with Georgiani, 2 episodes with Mark Stavish, who wrote a book on egregores and who it was such an interesting book that someone from the military or a military contractor reached out to him about it because they wanted to weaponize it. So 2 episodes with him, and then I have 2 more episodes with Steve Mera. No, it's a distributed ledger. Um, it would be on some server on some other side of the world. It would be fine. Yep. Yeah, he's a good dude. So we shall see. We shall see. But yeah, Bitcoin took a little bit of a hit too, but I got it below 100, well, 100K per coin. Right. I only have a fraction of a coin, obviously, but I'm still making money on Bitcoin. So, what else? Oh, so, and then I got two with Steve Mera. I have another interview scheduled on Monday with, why am I not remembering his name? Oh, you know what? I'm just looking at my dang calendar. Okay. Anthony Peak. So hopefully I'll record 2 episodes with Anthony Peak. And then I have an interview with Peter Karl scheduled in November. So I need to get a spiritual ascension. Good to see you. I'm surprised Gray Al didn't chide you for being late. Gray Al, what are you doing, man? You got to be consistent. You got to lay down that law consistently. Otherwise, nobody will follow it. Anyway. Oh, how are we all doing? So anyway, there's like 6 episodes. I think I'm close to being done for November. I just have to upload everything, which was happening while we were on this radio show. It was, the uploads were happening, but I still have to create all the descriptions and all that crap. So, let's see. That's a good question. Pavlos asks, do you think Nathaniel Gillis and Frater Eleftheria would do a joint interview? Frater Eleftheria probably would. I don't know about Nathaniel though. Yeah, I'm not sure. A more likely interview would be Nathaniel and Stephen Mera, but they constantly have like a show together on Stephen Mera official on that channel. Like they constantly do stuff. So yeah, I might ask Nathaniel like right after this show if he wants to do another one. He's been going back and forth with Kurt Metzger, which is crazy town. Crazy town. So who's not too into Enochian magic? Frater Eleftheria or Nathaniel? All right, so spiritual ascension said, to be very honest, the reason I'm late is because Pokemon Z through A was released 3 days, or it's 3 days ago, and your girl's been busy. I see. Oh, Gillis? Yeah, he'd probably anything. Yeah, Kerp. The derp with Kerp or something. Oh man. Yes, the derp with Kerp. Just things are weird. Like the whole thing. The fact that like that guy has watched episodes from my channel and remembers it is really a really weird rendering of reality. Really weird. So very, very, very strange. Quick smart. But I seen your live notification and I dropped that pokey game. Quick smart. What accent is that? What accent is that, folks? I'm either really bad at it or you can figure it out, but I'm not going to say. It's wicked smart. Yep. Yeah, he just had Walter Bosley on the derp with Kerp too. Kerp and Kyle Dunnigan interviewing Frank Stallone while imitating Sly was weird enough. That whole thing is weird. Yeah, that's a Boston accent. Yep. Probably not a good one, but probably good enough. Put a bloody shrimp on the barbie. That was not a good Australian accent. That's not a knife. This is a knife. Yeah, I've never heard quick smat either, but it just reminded me of wicked smat. Yeah, it's Boust. I don't even. Anyway, who knows? Let's see. What else can we do? What's a Canadian accent? How do they say no really weird? It doesn't sound like no. Like nah or something. I don't know. $19.99? I don't know. 99? Who knows? Oh my goodness. Oh, I see. 1999. I guess. I'm just saying this phonetically, Gray Al, or the way you've spelled it. That's helpful. If you just spell things the way that they sound, I can probably do a better accent. Anyway, I don't know who Spiritual Ascension is clapping for. I'm assuming it's for Gray Al. Who's butchering it? Gray Al or me or both? Yeah, I did. I watched it today. Pavlos is saying, anybody see the Sarfati Y-Files episode? Yeah, and he covered the Walter Breen weirdness. That was important. I didn't ask Sarfati when I interviewed him because I didn't want to go there. But Walter Breen spent his remaining days in prison for PDF file stuff. So no, it was just it was about Sarfati. Sarfati wasn't interviewed. Gray Al's not a Yankee. He's a Canuck. I'm a Yankee. Oh, how we doing? All right, I can't tell if we have. Oh, we got 4 minutes left. So, what do we all want to cover in the last remaining 4 minutes? Oh yeah, cucumber sandwiches. That just sounds like torture. Yeah. Ugh. This sounds awful. Um, let's. How was this thing even doing? Oh boy. Yeah, so today, let's just look at subscribers today. Where the hell is that? Yeah, pretty terrible day. Like 23 subscribers. If I grow at 23 subscribers a day, I will not make it to that 20,000. So I mean, it is the weekend, so weekends do tend to suck, but still. Let me see how we're doing on this thing. Oh, for goodness gracious. Yeah, not great. Not too sweet, but it is what it is. It is what it is. And let's see. I think everything else is looking okay. And just put in today's date. I didn't realize, yeah, it's the 18th, I guess. Very strange. All right. All right, let's go through the remaining. How is the front? I just told you how the front was on the eastern flank. Yikes. No, at this point, no. We have to be conservative. We can't invade. Thoth, a.k.a. Tehutil, a.k.a. Hermes Trismegistus. Yeah. Spiritual Ascension, I'll watch back for sure. I hope so. I thought it was a good interview, but both episodes are already uploaded. I still have to correct some stuff, but they're both already uploaded now and scheduled for the first and second week of November. So we'll see. We'll see if they're the biggest interview yet. It was an interesting interview, that's for sure. All right. I think we are at the end of the hour. So you all have a fantastic rest of your weekend and a great week next week. And thank you for tuning in. And I will see you again. God bless and Godspeed.